when you cut these for the miter slots, you want them to run through. You don't want them to bind up, but at the same time you don't want them too loose. This one right here is fitting perfectly. Inside my gap is 3/4 of an inch, so I cut this at 3/4 of an inch. In the height, I didn't even measure it. Stuck the piece of wood in after I got it milled to 3/4 of an inch, and just drew a line just below. You'd rather it too low than too high. If it's too high, your sled's going to be sitting up. It's not going to be flush on the table. If it's too low, it doesn't really matter. It's still going to be sitting side to side. Or if it's too low, then it doesn't really matter. It's going to be sitting there. You're still going to be sitting on the table. I've got mine pretty much flush to the table. So I just drew a line, cut that. First thing you want to do when we're setting up, I've got both already cut. Both of them fit in there pretty good. They're not rising above the table. See that? You just want to run straight edge across there. It's all even. First thing you want to do when you're going to put the piece of wood on, lower your saw all the way down so it can sit flush. Bring the table or the sled to where it's flush. These miter runners. Flush right there. It's all flush with the table. So perfect right there. When you're putting these screws in to attach your miters, it'd be preferable to have a T. I don't have one. So draw a line. All you're doing right here is outlining pieces of wood that are going down in the miter slots. And therefore you can get a middle or a center on where you're going to be putting your screws. From there I take my ruler, line it up as good as I can with those. And draw lines all the way through. When running these through, I'd put at least 5 screws in each one. You're going to countersink these, so you don't want them coming up. This board is 24 inches, so with 5, I'm going to put one every 4 inches. On this one, when I go down, I'm going to countersink it, but I don't want to go all the way down. I'm going to countersink it to about right here. Could clamp this board while you're doing it. I'm not going to, mainly because the underside of my table isn't solid, so it really wouldn't do anything for me. With this being such a piece that you don't want to mess up, you definitely don't want to strip these holes out. I would always put them in by hand. Move on to the next one. Screw that in on by hand. Next two. Put the last screw in. Get that pretty tight. Right now, Should not have any problems with any kind of binding. Might come when you put the fence on, but right now you shouldn't have anything. For the front fence, you want to find whichever board is flatter each way. The back fence, rear fence doesn't matter at all. Both of these boards are pretty good. This one's got that notch on it, so I'm going to make that one my back. Alright, I've got it all done now. It's all traced out. Now I'll just take this, cut along the line. There I've got the lines drawn symmetrical, both sides. I'm going to cut it on the scroll saw now. I don't have a bandsaw, and I'm not a huge fan of the jigsaw, especially with a thick piece of wood like this. Saw will end up bending and I won't get a straight cut. And something that you'll see me doing a lot is forgetting my protection. Alright, I've got those pieces cut down so I can clamp stuff and also have a big base to be able to brace stuff on while I'm pushing it through the saw. Now I'm just going to put a small chamfer on all the edges. I don't have a table router, so I have to use the handheld, but I'm going to put a chamfer on all the edges, and it'll just make it a little easier. Dust won't push up, so I can push stuff directly up to the wall, and it'll get in that little channel if it needs to. I don't need to do one on the bottom of these. This will be the outside, so I want this flush with the table anyways. Clean these edges up. 220. We're putting this fence on. Going to put it on at the front. We'll put the back on later on. But the way to get this even is, there's no way to get it even right now. We know that this is flush with the edge of the table saw, but this might be off. There's no telling how much. There's a little bit of play in it. There's no telling how much it's actually off from being 90 degrees to the blade. So what we'll do is actually turn the saw on and slowly bring the blade up through the middle, bring it, and bring it to like right here. So we can put something up, put it flush with the fence, and then stick a ruler in there, stick something in there that's a flat, and then put an angle up to it. Put a 90-degree angle up to it so we can make sure that the fence will be flush with the saw. Put some lines, flipped it upside down, put some lines on the bottom of this, just reference. So I know that I'm not putting the holes too far in or too far out. And I just put about 11.5 inches. So want it 4 inches. 8. Now on this side it's not going to be as important. This one's still going to do it, your 4 inches. This one we're going to mark at 8 inches. More than likely we're going to have to change this one. This one we're going to be drilling first, do some pre-cuts, make sure everything's level, and then we might have to move that hole. Pre-drill these, that way I can stick it up. Also going to countersink these. Alright, turn it back over. So go ahead and clamp this down as even to the board as possible. Like I said, we've got this side in. That'll be a flush. And then T, run it up against this. 90 right there. This is the saw, so that will make this at 90-degree angle of the piece. Now you could have some problems with going through, torquing these or putting these screws in. You're not going to have any problem pushing. After you put all these in, you might have a little bit of problem going through. It might go back here. Mine just worked out real good. All the way through. I can just push it. This is real solid on the base. You don't want it real hard to push through, because if you're pushing through and you're having to push real hard on this and torquing it, well, you're going to end up either making this come loose, it's going to come untrue, it's just not going to, it's not going to cut right. You're going to get away from that 90-degree angle that we had. So got this. This is running good. If not, you can find out where you are running wrong. If it's going in the middle, if it's starting to scuff towards the back when the back goes in, you can just shave a little bit off the sides, find out where it is, put a little bit of marker on there or something that'll start rubbing off. This one's cutting good, so I'm not going to do anything. Next thing I'm going to do, take this back piece, get my back fence, put that on there. I was just going to leave it like that. I was just going to leave it like that, but my wife informed me that that would look ugly, and thinking about it, it does look ugly. So I'm going to match it a little bit to this, but not quite as much. It's not necessary. If I wanted to do that, it'd be fine. If I wanted to cut a little piece like this, it would be fine. Just something you don't, because that can still move a little bit. These right here will expand. They'll get smaller. Humidity and all that stuff. So you just, this crack right here can still move a little bit. So you're just doing this to make it, to make that stay true. I could do that. I'm going to pretty much match this. I don't want to match it exactly because then I'll get confused on what it really is. I think I might actually match this, but make this just shorter and maybe about that wide. And it'll have the same angles and everything. It will just be maybe an inch shorter, 2 inches shorter, and it won't go all the way to the edges. So I'm going to get that drafted up. Well, going through, I found I need a smaller ruler. I'm going to take this to the table saw, or make this one an inch shorter than that one. Going to make it an inch shorter, and it's also going to be, it's going to be lower, and it's also going to be a little thin, or not quite the 3 feet, the 36 inches, probably be more like 24 inches. So I've got 1 inch that I'm going to take off, run that to the table saw, take that off, then I only want 24 inches, so I'm going to run that. Now I'm just going to put a chamfer on both of these, clean it up a little bit. I'll sand all that, chamfer the other side, and then we're going to put this on the table. Or on this one, the back fence, like I said earlier, it's not necessary for this to be completely 90 degrees because it serves no purpose. The only purpose it serves is keeping this, but it serves no purpose with an actual straight cut. So I'll put this on. And we'll go ahead and clamp this in. Put a couple pilot holes in there, countersink them, 4 screws in this, and we'll be done. And there you go. Your table saw sled. I didn't cut out the notch right there, but in the first cut, I'll cut that. And it's all running good. It's not binding on the blade at all. This is good for, you got your 90-degree cut. You can cut anything. And also, there's also another reason why you wanted to cut down right here, is you cut this right here, and you've got to do competitive or repetitive 3-inch cuts. You set this to 3 inches, cut it through, move that to the side, bring it back. You've got that block right there to go to. So, really good piece, and probably all my other projects will have this included with making them, because it's the best way to have a 90-degree. So I appreciate you watching, and I hope you build it, and I hope you get a lot of success out of it.